All right, and the game is beginning. All right, we have Artosis versus Mondragon. 3, 2, 1, and the game begins. All right, now let's see where these positions are on the map. This is a very important game. This is probably perhaps the most pivotal group that we have here in the StarCraft tournament. This is the Group B. I got to change my my speed of my mouse scroll so that I can adequately observe this game. We have Artosis starting at the top right of the map with Mondragon at the bottom left. This is on the map Azalea or Azelia. Everybody seems to read it differently, so I'm just going to say all the ways to say it right now, just so everybody knows what I'm actually talking about. It's a very flat map, and it's I gotta say, just from the other players and what I've heard from them, and this is just also from my own experience from being a StarCraft player, a lot of people say that Terran have a little bit of a difficulty against Zerg mid-game on this map, mainly because of the open spaces and the fact that Zerg, if I can just, actually I don't have that capability to turn the map vision off, the map cloud off, but essentially, Zerg can get a double expo up here, so Terran's going to have to do something about that in order to kind of halt his opponent from getting a stronger economy. I see Mondragon scouting in a kind of a bizarre way, actually. I see him scouting in this general direction, kind of diagonally, actually heading towards Artosis. And I also see a drone being sent out now, setting up to the top left corner of the map. Scouting is very important in StarCraft. This is, for those of you who are not familiar with the game StarCraft, this is an economy-based RTS game versus a hero-based RTS game such as Warcraft 3. So it really all comes down to, how do I slow my opponent down from getting a stronger economy, from producing more units? What techniques will I use for that? I see more people coming in here. I see the Superstar Testing now entering the room. Oh my God, I'm trembling right now, hoping he'll think I'm cool when I cast this. And I now see Mondragon throwing down a pool before the hatchery. This is a kind of a defensive play. A lot of Terrans like to bunker rush the Zerg early, especially if the Zerg goes hatch first. Mondragon perhaps assuming that maybe Artosis can only hinder him early, since Mondragon's macro and understanding of mid-game and late game is so strong. He's going to go kind of with a defensive opening, also because he has not scouted his opponent yet. He has not found out exactly where he is, although he will in moments. Artosis also has not found his opponent yet. Artosis now sending his unit down to the bottom left. Here we go. Mondragon finally managing to get into his base. And we see that right now Artosis is going for 2 barracks, kind of an aggressive play. And now I see the SCV coming down here into Mondragon's base, and we now see that Artosis will be aware of the fact that Mondragon is expanding. However, this pool came up before the hatchery, so the Zerglings will come up sooner rather than later, and that will make any kind of rush of any sort very difficult. As you can see, there's kind of a wide choke here on this map. So many times players build buildings here in order to make this actual entrance point much smaller, and in this case it will be much smaller. It will be about this size. That'll kind of act as a filter, so to speak, so that units will have a harder time rushing through here. Artosis only got about 4 Marines there, and perhaps he will fast expand. I do not know. Now we see Mondragon scouting, building a hatchery up here at the Gas Expo. As I said earlier, a lot of Zergs enjoy double expanding on this map, primarily because there's only one point of entry here. It makes it very easy for you to defend from a rush. And I think that's why many Terran players do have a little bit of a difficulty mid-game in Terran versus Zerg on this map. Particularly just because Zerg can expand, they get ahead of you very quickly, and it becomes very hard to out-macro them. Artosis only got those 4 Marines out, and right after that, he got a command center. Not a bad move. I think an offensive play here would be futile, to say the least, since it would be very difficult for him to actually penetrate this. This is my 3rd game here casting at WCG. I casted Uv versus Lamer, which I think, to be honest, I think Uv might be going to jail for rape after that game. And to be honest, when I saw the Mondragon versus Midas games, they were a little bit more exciting, but I don't know. I mean, shortly after the game, from what I understand, Midas actually went up to Mondragon and uppercutted him in the face, and Mondragon landed in a bowl of punch. It was pretty impressive. It's been pretty one-sided so far for the Koreans, and now we're finally watching 2 foreigners play. And I got to say, two very good foreigners at that. Artosis getting third here this year at WCG USA. Last Gosu first and Day second. However, neither of those two players were able to make it due to work or school constraints. So Artosis will now be down here representing the United States. They only sent one player for StarCraft, so the pressure is definitely on right now. However, the pressure is on for Mondragon as well to maintain the name that he has made for himself as perhaps one of the best foreigners in the world. The best foreigners being people outside of Korea. This is the general term used in StarCraft. I see an engineering bay and an academy going up. This will be very helpful for these two scanners which will be made right now, or one, whenever Artosis feels like making that second one. And that's going to be very helpful for lurkers, scanning against lurkers, the invisible unit which can burrow underground. Well, it's invisible when it's burrowed, I guess, but it's going to be very helpful in combating those, as well as scanning his opponent's base to see what exactly he's doing. We're kind of in a defensive moment in the game. Both players have essentially decided that at this point in time in the game, they need to sit back. Neither of them can really do any serious damage to each other, and instead, we're in sort of a macro phase of the game. One of the difficulties about a game like StarCraft, that being the hardest RTS ever created, is I think the macro element of the game is trying to constantly keep up with producing units out of every building. Thankfully, Blizzard has not made it easy. You can't hotkey all the buildings to one key or anything newbie like that. You actually have to click on each individual one. You have to tell each building to make the unit. You have to make sure you're constantly making supply depots so you can produce at the rate that you wish to produce at. So it's a very difficult thing to do, to juggle all these concepts as well as scout and attempt to attack your opponent. It's very complicated. We see that Mondragon decided to be merciful to that Marine and for some reason let him live. And then he's now going to go in here and see if he can't scout his opponent's base. We now see these Marines getting killed over here, but more importantly, Mondragon will be able to scout his opponent, and he will now see that Artosis is deciding to get the supply depot up here. For the rest of these Zerglings, they will be destroyed. However, Mondragon, his mission has been accomplished there as he now sees what he needed to see in his opponent's base. The layer is now up. Now, very soon here, we're going to see a little bit more of an aggressive phase. This is kind of something I've seen a lot with Mondragon. He's going to be getting these Mutalisks up here and probably getting this armor upgrade out of this evolution chamber. And he's going to use these Mutalisks to essentially harass Artosis. Artosis, perhaps being aware right now that Mutalisks are on the way, has thrown up 4 towers at his expansion. These are anti-air static defense. Very useful when combating Zerg Mutalisks. Also allows you to leave your base with a medic marine so you don't have to stay back and be on the defense. Instead, you can be more up on the offense, as we're seeing here. Artosis seems to be macroing just fine. I do see this engineering bay upgrading. I would assume that's the attack upgrade that is being upgraded right now, although I have seen the armor upgrade. I think that might be a little bit more useful against, I don't know, lurker blast or something like that. So let's assume that for in this case he's getting the attack upgrade. That would seem more sensical to me. And right now we see Mondragon's Mutalisk flying through here. Now remember, Mondragon, I do not know the record for any of the groups yet. I have not been able to get out of my broadcasting position, so I do not know what the score is in this group, but all I can say is that every game in this freaking group is so important, because this is without a doubt the most difficult group in here. There is no opportunity. You cannot afford to lose a game in this group if you expect to get out. And in this case, with Mondragon already having lost to Midas, he will have to absolutely not lose this game, else risk being eliminated from this tournament, if you will. And right now we see Mutalisk right now picking off Artosis' units. This is essentially what we call harassment right now. He's controlling the Mutalisk, flying them around these buildings which the Marines cannot move through. He's going to pick off these units, and that is going to affect Artosis' push later on, as well as the stim which he will be wasting. And these Mutalisks are going crazy on Artosis. This is pretty brutal. It looks like Artosis, for whatever reason, is moving his Marines down here, and it looks like he was perhaps checking to see if there was an expansion over here. You know, a lot of times, especially in a game like StarCraft, you have to concentrate so hard. I think the most difficult part of this game is not even so much just understanding it, but being able to keep your cool and keep doing exactly what it is you're doing without losing concentration. So much pressure's on you right now. Your entire country is, hoping and keeping their fingers crossed that you can do the best that you possibly can, and you don't want to let them down. There's a lot of pressure going on. And, you know, this game is just so good. I'm really excited to see how this one in particular will unfold. Mondragon now throwing up an expansion at the bottom right. Mutalisk maintaining harassment over here. SCB is getting pulled over here. He's going to use this turret to kind of stay back here. Mondragon seems to be losing an unnecessary amount of Mutalisk this tournament, as he is proving my point right now by losing all 4 of those. That was very poor by Mondragon. I don't know. I don't know what happened there, other than to say that perhaps the pressure is on right now for both these players, and mistakes do happen. It is almost impossible to play a perfect game of StarCraft. You know, there's so many things you got to juggle. You will always miss a beat here or there, and that is just part of this game. We now see Artosis spotting this. Whoa, careful, Artosis. We now see him spotting this group of lurkers and zerglings right out here, and Mondragon essentially putting up a contain down here. For those who don't know this game, you have to be very careful with controlling units in Terran versus Zerg. Both the units are very fragile. It really comes down to a lot of how well you're microing all those units, as well as how well you're macroing so that you can replenish those units. So now we see him pulling back here. He has to be very careful. The lurkers do not attack when they're unburrowed. They can only attack when they're burrowed, so he essentially has to leapfrog those across over here into his base, or move them all at once, whichever one gets them there the quickest. And you know, you see, for those of you, I'm trying to dumb this down just so that people who don't play this game can still follow this and can still appreciate this. Each of these units here has their own special function. This one spots the lurkers, and as we can see, those Scourge kill the flying vessel, which spots the lurkers. Each unit kind of counteracts, one unit counteracts another one, and you're essentially trying to micro or control these units to the best of your ability to pick off, ultimately to win the game. And right now we see Mondragon kind of putting the pressure on Artosis. Now, to be honest, there's really no way that Mondragon could rush in here and kill Artosis unless Artosis really screwed up his micro. But what's important is that Mondragon is taking the entire map right now, as we are seeing here. And Zerg are a race that have to take a lot of the map in order to stay ahead. What we're going to see is Artosis constantly building up these units and getting ready for what we call the Terran push. The push being the moment where he will gather all of his units here and essentially move out down this area, break out. He'll have to combat these units here, and then he'll have many options to go. And notice that Mondragon has very strategically expanded. He's expanded to this corner, and he has one expansion over here. There are 3 different directions he can go, and it's very hard, I think, for many Terran players to figure out which way does he go after he breaks the push. And Mondragon is going to be relying on that when this push comes out here, as well as relying on his excellent macro to basically overwhelm his opponent, hoping that his Mutalisk harassment held him off for long enough. Careful, Artosis. But, all right, we are seeing now both players being very careful. Zerg slowly walking back, hoping that Artosis will once again make the mistake we saw him do earlier of losing his units to that lurker line. Artosis chasing him out right now. Both players, again, must be very careful. The units are very fragile in this matchup. He's going to burrow now. Artosis has to dart back, and he did so very well. He's on the move now. It looks like, for whatever reason, due to the direction in which the units are moving, they will be chased down to this expansion. A smart move by Mondragon, and although this expansion is not really being used, he will be able to save these 2. To be honest, it seems like Mondragon's macro is lacking just a little bit. Perhaps this is not his best game, but it looks like Artosis' micro is lacking a little bit too right now. Right now, the push getting farther and farther in here. Mondragon leapfrogging his units backwards, attempting to buy time. Artosis has decided at this moment that the push must cease. He has lost too many units. It is too dangerous right now, and I would have to agree, judging by the massive amount of Zerg troops we're seeing over here. It would be too dangerous right now to push any further. 2 factories now for the Terran, and let's check the upgrades. What do you got here, Artosis? We have a 1-0 upgrade for 1 attack upgrade for Marines. That'll make the Marines much stronger. It's shooting down the lurkers before they burrow. Very common technique used in this game. And, I gotta say right now I'm gonna lean with this game being in Mondragon's favor, although it's gonna really depend on how well he controls his units up here. I see the Defilers now coming up. The Defilers consuming the Zerglings, which gives them the mana to cast Dark Swarm. You will see an orange cloud thrown up over here. The orange cloud makes it impossible for ranged units to do damage in. And as we can see, all these Terran units have ranged attacks, with the exception of these little fire bats. All right, the lurkers now coming in here. The cloud being thrown down, and Artosis must retreat back. some special ed Marine over there kept sitting around and ended up dying. More units being pushed back. The push is completely being deflected by Mondragon, and we are now seeing that, well, it appears like unless he can irradiate both of these defilers, Zerg will push the Terran back completely. Terran must be very careful with how he controls his units. He did get stuck behind this tree, and the lurkers should pick it off. Careful, Artosis. Mondragon's macro appears to just be very strong this game, and he's just pushing forward and forward, using these dark swarm clouds as cover in order to stay inside of his base. I see a small group of units down here. I don't know what the story is or how these guys got here because I was so focused on what was going on over here. But this group over here will actually pick off this expansion. Excuse me. This push over here will pick off this expansion, and then it's going to make it very difficult for Mondragon to maintain its. I lied. I didn't see the Zerglings. Here are the Zerglings. They stopped that. This is very, very uncomfortable for Artosis right now. Mondragon basically has this game in his hands right now. Artosis does not have a lot of options right now. As you can see, Mondragon has had the map for far too long. A ridiculous amount of units now being produced. And it looks like Mondragon will just send this group of units, knowing that most of Artosis' army was down here. He will send this in here in an attempt to pick off Artosis' second expansion, his third base. And it looks like he will do so with much ease. And right now, I think we can expect fairly soon here to see a GG coming from Artosis, which should secure at least Mondragon's spot in this tournament for a little bit longer. And again, don't forget this was the hardest group, without a doubt, at WCG. The only other hard one, being the one with Tessie, Raven, and White Raw, and all those guys. That's also a very good group, in my opinion. It looks like, yeah, there we go, GG. That was a very good game played by Mondragon. I had to say, I really liked the pushes that we saw back there. Yeah, excellent game. I like the pushes we saw back there from our